In 1983, one of the most difficult races of the world was won by a toothless old man that no one knew about. The Westfield Sydney to Melbourne Ultra Marathon was a gruesome race. All the runners were well-known professionals, each supported by an experienced team. So when a 61-year-old potato farmer entered the competition wearing an overall and gumboots, no one believed he could even finish the race.
Think that you're going to make it all the way?
Oh yeah, for sure.
In fact, and to no one's surprise, he quickly fell behind the pack. And by the end of the first day, he was literally in last place. But at night, when the other runners were sleeping, he was still running. And 544 miles later, it would be him to first cross the finish line. Not only that, but he also crushed the previous record in the process, revolutionizing the sport twice and becoming an instant celebrity. Everyone was shocked by his victory, but what he decided to do next was something no one expected. This is the story of Cliff Young. Cliff Young was born on February 8, 1922 in Beach Forest, Australia. When you hear Australia, you probably think about an arid climate or a major city like Sydney. But where Cliff grew up, the air was fresh and the land green. The area was perfect for farming, so naturally, his family had settled in this corner of Australia to farm potato. By now, Cliff is just a farm boy, and everyone calls him Cliffy, a nickname he will keep for the rest of his life. So we'll call him Cliffy as well. But times are tough. The Great Depression has made its way to rural Australia, so Cliffy is living in a one-room bark hut with his parents. That's right, the whole family is squeezed into a tiny space that's more like a tree fort than a house. And he is not an only child. He has to share the space with his 6 other siblings. But Cliffy is not your average kid. While other kids might be playing hide and seek, Cliffy has a job, herding sheep, and not just a couple, but 2,000 of them spread across 2,000 acres of farmland. As you can expect, he doesn't have a horse or a dirt bike. He's doing it on foot, running and walking, sometimes for days. And how is he doing all that? Well, he doesn't exactly have any fancy running shoes. Instead, he's running with heavy rubber boots. Just imagine for a second, running, not on a smooth track, but across rough, muddy, and hilly farmlands, all in gum boots, for several hours every day. That is making Cliffy tough, really tough. Not just his legs, but his mind too, from such a young age. Rain or shine, he's out there, shuffling through the fields, mastering a unique running style that will make him become the hero of a nation, but he doesn't know it yet. For now, he's learning how to survive, how to keep going when everything's telling you to stop, and that's something he will never forget. Now in his 30s, Cliffy has grown up into a humble and quiet man, but unfortunately for him, life is still difficult, and his money situation is not better. So, to support his family, he decides to go all the way to Queensland to work as a seasonal sugarcane cutter. He never really ventures far from his home in Beach Forest, so this is really the first time he's traveling and opening up to this big world. He meets other runners that convince him to compete. But we are not talking about long distance here. Instead, Cliffy decides to take part into 1-mile race competitions. He begins to shine, and Cliffy gets his confidence up. So much so that he is about to participate to a big local race. There's a glint in his eye, a steady pace in his step. He's giving his all. But unfortunately, his dream is short-lived. He cannot do better than a 3rd place in the 1955 Goldfield Mile. But Cliffy knows deep down, as he would later recall this moment, "I wasn't much chop in the short races. I was like a Melbourne Cup horse. I needed it longer." Back in Beach Forest, Cliffy stops competing altogether, but he never actually stops running. While his brother focuses on potato farming, Cliffy can still be seen running around the town in those heavy gumboots. But for the community, Cliffy's passion is pointless, and everyone is looking down on him. It's the 1950s, and the times are too hard to waste it on running around. Why does he spend so much time and energy for nothing? Why doesn't he put that effort into helping the family more? But Cliffy's connection to running is something deeper, something almost spiritual.
I suppose you got to stand alone if you want to do anything. Do what you reckon you're going to do and don't let anyone talk you out of it. You got to be strong.
Every morning, Cliffy gets up early, laces up his gumboots, ready for his daily ritual. He's running in the muddy farmland for 12 to 18 miles. In the solitude of his runs, Cliffy finds a sense of belonging that goes beyond the rolling hills of his hometown. Life goes by, and decades later, Cliffy has moved from Beach Forest to the nearby town of Colac. He is now 57 when he spots an ad that will change the direction of his life forever. This ad is for a fun run in Melbourne. More precisely, a 10-mile run. For Cliffy, that's a piece of cake. He does more than this every day, but he thinks it'd be the opportunity to do something different. So he goes there with his usual gumboots and destroys the race. Well, to be fair, he doesn't win or anything, but he finishes the 10 miles in just over an hour. It's such an impressive feat that he's even interviewed by the Melbourne media. But you know what? The journalist at the time of printing the story was like, what? This guy? 64 minutes? Come on, he must have cheated. We can't publish that. So they never actually printed the story. But Cliff has now tasted an endurance running competition, and he absolutely loved it. At an age where most people think they are too old for new challenges, Cliffy has a different idea. He thinks he's still in great shape and he should probably take advantage of it. He wants to see what his body is capable of before he gets too old. Yeah, in his mind, Cliffy is still a young man. I guess there is a reason why his name is Cliff Young. But anyway, after that fun run, Cliffy thought, that little 10 miles? Way too easy. Let's do some real challenges. So he straight up decides to participate in the Melbourne Marathon, which he completes with a time of 3 hours and 21 minutes. A great time for his first marathon. And then he reiterates the exploit at another marathon, and then again the next year. Cliff Young legend is underway, and he is pumped. By that time, word slowly starts spreading locally, but many still doubt him. For example, at his previous marathon, the TV commentator literally said that Cliffy must have come in from a side street or something, because there was no way this guy finished with such a good time. But Cliffy, he doesn't care about all the rumors. He is hungry for more, and he seems unstoppable. Marathons aren't enough anymore for him, so he starts competing in ultras, 50 miles and then 100 miles. In that 100 miles race, there are 20 starters, but only 2 are able to finish the race. Cliffy has his first victory, but behind him, finishing in second, was a man called Joe Record. And Joe is an eccentric Englishman, but more importantly, he is a professional athlete with tons of experience. Unlike Cliffy, who is still a no-name, Joe is well known in the world of long-distance running. So when he was beaten by Cliffy, what do you think happened? Was he mad? Well, actually, not at all. The opposite, in fact.
Would you have given up all hope of catching Cliff?
No, he's out of sight, mate.
He was so impressed. And so, a great friendship, but also a rivalry was born. Unfortunately, Cliffy's climb to the top is going to hit a snag. After winning this 100 miles race, you think he'd be satisfied. But no, he is still hungry for more, and he is feeling more confident than ever. Maybe a little too confident. So he sets his eyes on the 1,000-mile world record. But for such a big challenge, he needs a team around him. He still has no money and no notoriety. So all he can do is convince some of his hometown friends to support him. The problem is that they know nothing about running and how to manage such an event. Food, hydration, physical recovery, every little detail counts on this kind of distance. But they have no idea what they are doing. Despite the situation, Cliffy pushes as hard as he can, but at the halfway mark he realizes he bit off more than he could chew, and sadly, he has to give up, facing a major setback. Cliffy is devastated. He feels like he let down his friends, but he already accomplished a lot, and he is now over 60 years old. So maybe he did enough already, and it might be time to stop running. Yeah, that's absolutely not Cliffy's mindset. You see, most people would have thought this is enough and hang up their boots, but Cliffy still hasn't made a name for himself. He still believes he can do something great. He still believes in his capabilities, and he wants to make up for it to his friends. And so, he decides to participate in the upcoming 1983 first ever ultra marathon from Melbourne to Sydney. This will be the hardest race in the world. It will span over 544 miles. It's not the first time that people attempt to run this distance, but in this event, the best ultra marathon runners from all over the world will be present, and the winner will win $10,000, which was a lot of money at the time, and Cliffy desperately needs that money. He's surviving on just $2,000 per year, and that's clearly not enough. All his life he has been struggling for money, so that could really help him, his brother, and his 89-year-old mom he is living with. But he knows, this time, he can't just jump in without proper preparation, especially after failing his previous challenge. He needs to really prepare for it. He cannot afford to fail again. He needs someone he can trust to support him. And guess who is also participating in that race? That's right, his good friend and rival, Joe Record. Joe is a famous and experienced professional, but most of all, he is the only one Cliffy can rely on for this race. So he gets in touch with him. He only has one request: training together. Of course, Joe accepts. And for several months leading to the race, they live together 24/7. Even for professionals, money is not exactly flowing. So Joe and Cliffy are living in a tiny trailer. But this is enough. This is all they need. They spend their day training, eating, and sleeping. At some point, they make a promise to each other. If one of them wins the race, then they will split the prize money equally between the two of them. And soon, the day of the race arrived. It's early in the morning of April 27, 1983, when all 11 competitors arrive at the Parramatta Westfield Shopping Centre in Sydney. Thousands of spectators are present to cheer on the competitors. All of them are well respected in the world of long-distance running, but among them, there are few favourites. George, a man who holds 16 Australian ultra records. John, who holds the current Sydney to Melbourne record. And Siggy, who holds the world 1,000-mile record that Cliffy failed to complete a while ago. As the press conference progresses, all the athletes are lined up. Each of them wears high-tech gear. They are all surrounded by a team of professionals. All but one stands out. Of course, it's 61-year-old Cliffy. And of course, he is wearing overalls, rubber boots, and long trousers. And his team, the same hillbillies that were with him at his failed challenge. That, and he also appears completely toothless. Yeah, he normally wears dentures, but they rattle when he runs, so he just took them off. Just imagine what must go through the mind of the organizers of the race, the spectators, and the other athletes when looking at Cliffy. Of course, no one is taking him seriously. He just looks like he's lost. Sure, he's had a few successes in the past few years, but he is still pretty much unknown at this point. Except for Joe, no one knew who this guy really was. The press conference is now getting long, and athletes are getting frustrated. They all want one thing, getting started. But during that time, Cliffy becomes the center of attention, and not in a good way. The public and media are flabbergasted. There is no way this guy can participate in this race. I mean, people found it funny at first, but they're quickly getting worried for his health. That's way too dangerous for him. What is he thinking? Remember, this is the toughest race in the world. We're talking about 544 miles. Do you know how hard is it to run a full marathon? This is literally running 21 marathons in a row. That's insane. I've run a marathon once in my life, and I couldn't walk properly for literally an entire week after that effort. So yeah, seeing a random toothless old farmer in literal work boots and overall next to elite level athletes must be surreal. Of course, Cliffy is feeling it. Everyone is looking down on him. He knows he has something to prove, but that's okay, because there is something that Cliff has more than anyone else: a self-belief in his own abilities. Finally, this endless press conference is over. The starting shot is fired and all the athletes are running. John, the current record holder, quickly takes the lead, followed by George, Siggy, and Joe. And Cliffy? His running style is something people have never seen before. It's more like he's shuffling, and everyone is making fun of him. It's such a slow pace that at the end of the first day, he's already very far behind the leaders. And unfortunately, he is exactly where everyone is expecting him to be. He is in last place, and most people think he's not going to last much longer already. He clearly doesn't belong here. Who even let him compete in this race? It's now 2 a.m. at the end of the first day, and most athletes have already stopped to take a 6 to 7 hours break for the night. But as if things couldn't get worse, it's at this moment that Cliffy falls on the ground, dislocating his shoulder. It's a disaster. Cliffy is in last place, and it's clear that he is going to fail miserably. And whereas many athletes are comfortably sleeping in a motel, Cliffy is in a caravan along the road. As he is falling asleep, he still has a glimmer of hope. He wants to prove them wrong. All of them. Not as a revenge, but as a way to show what he is truly made of. Later in the morning, one of Cliffy's crew members wakes up and takes a look at his watch. It's 7:25 a.m. and Cliffy should have already been running for almost half an hour. It just keeps getting worse. Panicked, he wakes up Cliffy, who thinks to himself that it was a quick sleep, but he doesn't ask any questions. The pain in his shoulders and the public opinion have nothing on him. He gets up, and this time he doesn't put on gumboots. He is switching to actual running shoes and starts running right away. No one knows it yet, but they just made history by changing the rules about multi-day ultra running. It wasn't 7:25 in the morning, it was 4:25 in the morning, and Cliffy had only slept 2 hours. Cliffy's hillbilly friend didn't have his contacts on and misread the time on his watch. But what is done, and Cliffy isn't about to go back to sleep. He's feeling good, high on endorphins, exhilarated by the situation. He sees the situation as an opportunity that he just cannot let go. And indeed, this changes everything. Later, the other athletes wake up and imagine their shock when they learn that Cliffy is now far ahead in first place and intends to keep pushing. Yet, most of them still don't take him seriously. They are like hares, confident they will catch up. He's a nice guy, but he must be foolish. That's a rookie move. There is no way he can keep going until the finish line like that. But Cliffy is confident the other won't catch up. I'm just an old tortoise. I have to keep going to stay in front. Nevertheless, behind him in second position is the 1,000 miles world record holder Siggy, and he isn't about to let Cliffy win easily. Right behind, in third place, is Cliffy's rival and friend Joe. He's already lost once again against Cliffy, so he knows better than anyone what he is capable of. But he also has a revenge to take.
But make no mistake, Cliff will run the bloody legs off me if he can. Do you know what he said before the race? He said, "Oh, if I get down the road there," he says, I won't be waiting for him."
I think I can catch the old Cliff. He says he is a tortoise, but I think the old is a hare in disguise. In fourth place is George, the one with many ultra-marathon records. John, the favorite that holds the record on this distance, has fallen to fifth, but he is the biggest hare of all. He is playing the long game, so he isn't too worried. But this second day is brutal, and some competitors already have to give up, and they are not small fry. Among the withdrawals is a guy that has successfully run 110 marathons in his life. Yet, this race was too much, even for him. It's so strenuous that Joe is literally urinating blood. Yeah, that's a real thing apparently. Although that's not enough to make him stop, it shows that he is severely dehydrated, and hydration is critical in long-distance running because it can severely affect performance. But it's also critical in life altogether. In fact, without proper hydration, you may not piss blood like Joe, but you will feel sluggish and tired, both physically and mentally. And this is true whether you run, lift weights, or even if you don't work out at all. Unfortunately, most sports drinks on the market often do more harm than good because they contain harmful sugars and additives. Not only do they not hydrate you properly, but they also put your health at risk. And they definitely don't contain enough potassium, which is the most important electrolyte. On top of that, the vitamins they contain are usually made in a lab like vitamin C, which is often derived from GMO cornstarch or corn syrup. But unlike Cliffy and Joe, you now have access to a true hydration drink thanks to Powder Vitamin. Powder Vitamin created an electrolytes powder that improves your focus and boosts your energy without any junk. Just mix a serving of powder with water and get access to essential electrolytes of the highest quality. It contains 14 times more potassium than common sports drinks, and its vitamin C comes from real food. It has no additives, no calories, and you have the choice between 10 different delicious flavors. So click on the link in the description and place your first order today. I recommend you to pick the value bundle so you can choose 4 different flavors for less than 23 cents per serving. Again, click on the link in the description to get your electrolytes today. Back in the race, the experts and media covering the event are not laughing at Cliffy anymore, but they all agree that he is going too fast, that his strategy shows his inexperience, that there is no way he can sustain his pace at such an age. Despite the naysayers, Cliffy keeps pushing and maintains his lead throughout the second night of the race. The first night mistake becomes his new strategy. From now on, he's planning to only sleep 1 or 2 hours every night until the finish line. He will keep running. He is determined to stay ahead of the other runners. Just think about the psychological impact on the other runners that go to bed, believing firmly there is no way Cliffy is going to pull another all-nighter, and then waking up and realizing the old farmer has run another marathon while you were sleeping. No one was prepared for such a tactic. And to be fair, Cliffy himself wasn't prepared for this tactic, but all his life he's been criticized for running in his hometown, and now he had those same people to support him in the most gruesome effort he's ever made. He cannot give up. This time, he has to keep going. On the third day, his friends tell him that he's done enough, that they are proud of him for what he did in this race already. He is leading, but he is struggling. His shoulder is still injured, and that's on top of the exhaustion and the pain that is covering his entire body. Everyone is worried for him, his crew and the public too. But other runners behind are experiencing physical difficulties as well, and Cliffy knows it, so he's pressing on, giving the creeps to his competitors who started dropping out like flies. The truth is that he wasn't only revolutionizing the sport with his sleeping strategy. His funny-looking running style is another reason why he can keep going for so long. Resulting from years of training on his farm, his shuffling is more energy efficient than any other athlete. But on day 4, rain begins to fall, and Joe, now in second, is catching up fast. In case anyone is still doubting the nature of the race, one runner says it all. This race is like banging your head against a wall, and the last standing wins. That's not an overstatement. Every runner is fighting against themselves, trying to accomplish something the human body is definitely not made for. Under the weather, Cliffy's vision becomes blurry. To keep going, he imagines he is running after a sheep trying to outrun a storm, but that's not enough to prevent his rival Joe from catching up. It is in the morning of day 5, and Cliffy has been sleeping for an hour and a half when Joe busts inside Cliffy's caravan. As Cliffy wakes up with a start to a friendly face, his rival tells him, "Hello, old buddy, I've caught you. Sleep tight." Joe then leaves as fast as he arrived and keeps running. Cliffy is startled. This time, he's the one to wake up with a bad surprise, but there is no way he can sleep one more minute after that. So he gets up, and now he's not stopping until the finish line. But what he doesn't know is that Joe was experiencing terrible pain and had accelerated his pace to fight that pain. He caught up to Cliffy in an adrenaline rush, but soon he will need more rest. His physical and mental condition is actually way past his breaking point, and after falling back a few places despite his determination, Joe eventually has to give up because of a kidney infection. But Joe's last-ditch effort was what Cliffy needed to give him the strength to go even further beyond his own limits. Cliffy has won against his rival, and there is no way he is going to stop there. He has grit, determination, and the strength he has built since running on his farm as a child. He is resolute in proving his capabilities to the world. George, Siggy, and John are still behind, and they are not giving up on this race either. They still believe that Cliffy will break at some point. But Cliffy is now getting close to Melbourne. Despite what everyone is saying, he is not even thinking about quitting. He has way too much to prove, to himself and to others. And he can't let down his friends that supported him during the entire race. Before the race, Cliffy was pretty much unknown, and most doubted he would last more than a day or two. But as he is approaching Melbourne, he is coming like a superstar. A TV camera is capturing his every step. That's something he is definitely not familiar with, and it gives him one more adrenaline boost. Cliffy's mental strength and determination are unmatched. He is unstoppable. People went from mocking him just a few days ago to admiring him like a hero. Now in Melbourne, it's late at night on day 5. It's raining, yet thousands of people are lining up in the streets just to see Cliffy, just to encourage and support him through the last few miles. He is a full marathon ahead of the next runner. No one is catching up now. The tortoise will win. People still can't believe what they are witnessing. He has sparked the imagination of the public. They all applaud Cliffy and urge him towards victory. The crowd grows as Cliffy shuffles his way towards the finish line. There are so many people, all the police can do is to stop the traffic and watch the amazing scenes in front of them. Shortly after 1:30 in the morning, and against all odds, Cliff Young crosses the finish line as the winner of the 1983 Westfield Sydney to Melbourne Ultra Marathon. It was 5 days, 15 hours, and 4 minutes since he had left Sydney, almost 2 days faster than the previous record for any run between Sydney and Melbourne. Cliffy had only slept 12 hours across that entire time. Over the next day and a half, George, Siggy, John, and 2 other runners would cross the finish line, all of them beating John's previous race record. But the entire country of Australia only wants to meet one man, and that's Cliff Young. After 5 hours of deep sleep, Cliffy is up to face the press and TV cameras, spending the entire day giving interviews. Everyone wants to congratulate him, including the Australian Prime Minister. He is truly a star now, but he promises that his new fame won't change the kind of man he is, and he is about to prove it. Cliffy, who has been living on $2,000 a year and has only known poverty his entire life, suddenly finds himself drowning in opportunities. He can stay in Melbourne and start a new life, the life of a celebrity. He has the potential of making up to $100,000 per year. That's a ton of money in 1983, especially for someone like Cliffy. Most people presented with such an opportunity would lose their mind, but not Cliffy. As he says himself, "I'd hate to be royalty. I don't think I am cut out to be such a public figure. I'm just a farmer, really." He's not against making a few brand deals here and there, but he has no interest in living a life of luxury. Instead, he prefers to go back to his peaceful and simple life in his rural town, not changing much to his lifestyle. But there are still a few things that are different when he returns. For the first time ever in his life, money is not a problem anymore. The few deals he does allow him to take care of his family and his farm without a worry. It gives him something much more important than riches: freedom. But that's not all. He, who was an outcast in his town because of the running, comes back as a hero because of it. He went from being looked down to being the most respected guy around. And what about the $10,000 he won? Well, that's where everyone was shocked. He decided to distribute his prize money among all the runners that finished the race because, and I quote Cliffy, "They all worked as hard as I did." He also gave some money to his crew to thank them for their support. But remember, Joe and Cliffy made a promise before the race. They were supposed to share the money between the two of them. So when Joe comes to remind his friend of this agreement, he realizes that Cliffy totally forgot about it. But Cliffy is a man of his word, so he just gave Joe most of what he had left, keeping basically nothing for himself. And I think that this is the perfect example of who Cliffy is as a person. He thought the attention he received would wear off in a week, but he was wrong. The Australian public fell in love with his character, and his life was changed forever. This old potato farmer had earned the hearts, minds, and souls of the average Australian, and for the rest of his life, he kept running. He participated in dozens of ultramarathons even at age 79, setting a total of 6 outdoor world endurance records, all while battling cancer. Cliffy, until the very end, never kept any prize money for himself, often donating it to charity or giving it away. He eventually passed away in November 2003 at the age of 81. He was gone, but he will never be forgotten. His 1983 victory was a triumph, not just of physical endurance, but also of mental strength, proving to everyone that age doesn't stop you. With his success, Cliffy became a national hero and popularized the sport of ultramarathon running. He changed the sport once with his unique shuffle, now officially known as the Young Shuffle, and even used by other athletes. And he changed the sport again by showing it was possible to keep running for much longer times than ever thought before. But above all, Cliffy will never be forgotten for his humor, his humility, and his generosity, which made him an inspiration to many. As another athlete remembers, Cliffy was, is, will always be a folk hero.